I'm a walking counter-narrative. Recently, I went to get my hair cut at a new salon near my house. And as I'm getting my hair cut, the Asian stylist asks me, "What do you do?" And I say, "I teach at the University of Washington." And she laughs. And then she goes on to explain that when she thinks about professors, the image that comes to mind is of an old white man. Every quarter, I have at least one student that says, "I've never had an Asian teacher before." Each of these moments is an opportunity to redefine who a teacher is and what a teacher does. I'm a teaching professor, and my contribution to the field of early childhood education is to inspire current and future educators to be advocates and change makers who question, challenge, and disrupt our currently inequitable systems. Growing up in Orange County in the 1980s, I was one of very few Asian children at my elementary school. And it happened frequently on the playground that my peers would pull up the corner of their eyes to mimic my almond-shaped eyes. And I was embarrassed, humiliated, and I endured. 25 years later, my son started first grade in the Bay Area, and as I was walking him to line up outside of his classroom, I see a child pulling up the corner of his eyes and laughing with the peer next to him. I was shocked that these same racist taunts were circulating still. And now as an adult, I spoke up. I talked with the teacher and the principal, and they led discussions school-wide. Just because something's persistent doesn't mean it has to be that way. So every quarter, I invite students to challenge what they thought they knew about educational systems. I want them to feel how school can be radically different than what they have experienced, and that together, we can imagine new ways of learning that go beyond compliance to rules, tests, and exams. I want them to feel how school can be so different. I believe they need to feel it to enact it. And so we breathe and we meditate together. Students share acknowledgments about what is important to them. I shift the power of assessment to students to determine their final grades through ungrading, and I tell them my stories. So one day I was at home with my 3 kids who were all under the age of 6 at the time, and I was cooking dinner, and my middle son, who is 3, starts jumping on the couch. Well, he gets 1 or 2 jumps in before he falls headfirst into the wooden coffee table and gets this big gash right between his eyes. And I'm panicking on the inside, and I call 911, and the paramedics arrive, and they calmly take him to the hospital. In the ER, the nurse takes a look at his face and says, "The doctor will be in shortly to stitch it up." I ask for the plastic surgeon. The nurse takes a look at me and says, "You don't need a plastic surgeon. If he were a girl, I'd get the plastic surgeon, but he's a boy, so you don't need one." I ask again. I insist. People make all sorts of judgments about what we need or what we deserve, and we have the power to refute those assumptions, demand what we deserve, and refuse to take no for an answer. I teach because I believe teaching is a powerful form of advocacy. Every conversation is the opportunity to reframe a person's thinking. And I know that what may not be possible for me when a system is too big for me to change, I can do the work of pouring into students, inviting them in so that the next generation can dream and design new ways of learning and being. It is hard to be a counter-narrative. It's painful, it's exhausting. And in moments of despair, when situations feel so unfair, like when repeated microaggressions wear me down, when my voice is erased or unacknowledged, or when it feels like I will never be enough in institutions that deny my humanity, I want to retreat and cry, which sometimes I do, and then I tell myself, there is so much more education to do because I want all children to walk free in this world. And so I set up meeting after meeting, and I show up over and over, relaying the same messages in 20 different ways. I believe education is a powerful lever for social change, and by embracing teaching in my professional and personal life, I spread hundreds of thousands of seeds of ideas that grow in the minds and actions of others. At a conference, a colleague and I spent 3 hours leading discussions about disrupting whiteness in early care settings. And at the end of our time together, a woman of color stood up with tears in her eyes, and she expressed deep gratitude to our predecessors for the opportunity to learn from us, 2 women of color that day. It was a touching reminder that we don't often get the opportunity to learn from folks who look like us. And as isolating as it can be, we are never alone in this work. It is a privilege to teach, and as teachers, we should be responsible ancestors, like the many folks of color who came before us and fought to belong in the spaces that were not made for them. Let us live and teach with purpose and intention toward a vision of a socially just world for our collective children. Tell your stories that resist the dominant narratives. Reinvent stories that inspire dreams of justice, and create new stories where we belong. I'm hopeful that in the future, when folks who look like me go get their haircut or go grocery shopping, and they say they're a teacher or a professor, that it won't be surprising. They won't need to be a counter narrative because the narrative will have changed. I invite you to join me in making that our reality.